The night was black, heavy with rain. Against the rusted chain-link fence of a forgotten alley, a small German shepherd puppy shivered, rope cutting deep into his fragile neck. His cries were almost swallowed by the storm, but every so often a sound slipped through. High, sharp, the sound of fear wrapped in exhaustion. Cars passed, windows closed, hours stretched into eternity. By dawn, the pup was no longer crying. His eyes glazed, head hanging, fur matted with cold mud. His tiny chest rose only when the wind forced air past his trembling lips. To anyone passing by, he looked more shadow than life. Another piece of trash left to rot. But then footsteps stopped. A man, coat drenched from the storm, bent down and froze. For a moment he thought he was too late. The rope was wound cruelly, the ground beneath soaked with the weight of a night too long. The man reached out, hesitated, then whispered, "Hold on, little one." The puppy's ear flicked. Barely. Faint. Fragile. But alive. And that was enough. What followed would test the edges of survival, stretch the patience of love, and reveal how thin the line is between giving up and fighting for one more chance.
The storm had a way of swallowing sound. Rain lashed against rusted tin roofs and gutter pipes, a steady drumbeat in the blackness of the city's forgotten corner. In that darkness, tied cruelly against a sagging fence, a German shepherd puppy trembled. The rope dug into his neck, each tug leaving red, raw skin beneath his damp fur. He had cried for hours, but somewhere in the hollow of the night, his voice broke into silence. To the world, he was invisible, a shadow clinging to wire, a discarded thing. Cars sped past the alley mouth, splashing through puddles without slowing. A man smoked beneath the streetlight, glancing once and turning away. The puppy's ribs heaved faintly, his tiny body surrendering to exhaustion, eyes half shut as though sleep might be kinder than the storm. But then, at dawn, footsteps slowed. A man walking home from a graveyard shift caught sight of the small shape. He thought it was trash, a plastic bag caught on the fence. But when he drew near, the truth clawed at his chest. It was a pup, soaked, limp, rope cutting deep. For a terrible second he thought he was too late. He reached out, fingers shaking, whispering, "Please, please, not yet." And then it came, the faintest twitch of an ear, the smallest flicker of life, enough to break him open. He pulled a pocket knife from his belt and cut the rope, scooping the fragile body into his arms. Against his chest, the pup was cold as stone, breath shallow as smoke. The man stared at the sky, rain dripping into his eyes, and promised a stranger he'd only just met, "I won't let you die here."
The man's car reeked of wet fur and storm water, but he didn't notice. His eyes darted from the road to the puppy, cradled in the passenger seat, wrapped in his jacket. The pup's chest stuttered, breath skipping, then returning in weak shudders. "Stay with me," the man muttered, one hand gripping the wheel too tight. Every red light felt like betrayal. Horns blared behind him, but he didn't care. He called the emergency clinic with one hand, voice cracking as he said, "He's barely breathing. Please be ready." When he burst into the clinic, the vet techs rushed forward, pulling the pup from his arms. For the first time, he felt helpless, watching strangers work, his fists clenched at his sides. The vet examined the puppy quickly, eyes grim. Severe hypothermia, dehydration, rope burns, deep ones. She looked up, hesitant. "You found him just in time. "But I can't promise he'll make it." The man nodded, throat thick. He whispered, "Just try." Minutes stretched like hours. The pup was placed under heat lamps, IV lines slipping into fragile veins, oxygen pressing against his nose. For one horrible moment, the chest stopped rising. A stillness hung in the room that felt like death itself. The man dropped his head into his hands, whispering, "Not like this. Not when he's finally safe." Then a gasp, small, shaky, but real. The chest lifted again. The room exhaled. The man's eyes filled. The fight wasn't over, but hope had cracked through the storm. The puppy, now named Chance, spent days in the clinic. His body fought infections from the rope wounds. His stomach rejected food, and fever sweated through his tiny frame. Every time he closed his eyes, the man feared they might never open again. But small miracles came. A tail twitch when the man whispered his name. A lick of water from a bowl after hours of refusal. The way his fragile body leaned into a gentle hand, as though trust was a language he barely remembered but wanted to relearn. The vet was cautious. He's stable, for now, but recovery won't be simple. His body is healing, but trauma like this leaves scars. She let the words hang in the air, heavy as truth. The man visited every day, sitting cross-legged on the floor beside Chance's kennel. He would talk quietly, telling the puppy stories he didn't expect him to understand, about the night he found him, about the promise he'd made. Sometimes Chance's eyes would follow him, wide and uncertain, but flickering with something fragile. Belief. By the end of the week, Chance could stand, unsteady, wobbling, but standing. It was enough to move the man to tears. But when the vet met him at the door one evening, her face was shadowed. "He's stronger," she said softly, "but he's not out of the woods yet." And in that warning lay the question that would haunt every step forward. Would love be enough?
Bringing Chance home was both triumph and terror. The man prepared everything. Soft bedding, bowls of food, quiet corners. But healing, he learned, wasn't just about the body. Chance startled at every sound. A slammed door sent him under the couch. Thunder left him shaking violently, hiding in the dark. He chewed walls, shredded blankets, refused to eat if watched. Nights were worst. He'd whimper in his sleep, paws twitching as though reliving the rope, the storm, the silence. The man's patience cracked at times. He'd sit on the floor, exhausted, whispering, "I don't know if I can reach you." But he stayed. He always stayed. The breaking point came one stormy night. A window rattled with thunder, and Chance bolted. The man chased him through mud, calling until his throat burned. Hours later, he found him curled beneath the porch, soaked and trembling. When he reached out, Chance flinched, but then, slowly, pressed his face into the man's palm. Kneeling in the rain, the man realized saving his body wasn't enough. Healing trust would take more than time. It would take a love stubborn enough to stand through every storm. And storms, he knew, would come again. Weeks bled into months, and slowly, gently, light returned. Chance began to eat with steady hunger. He wagged his tail, awkward, uncertain at first, then freer. He chased a ball across the yard, stumbling but laughing in the only way a dog can. The scars on his neck never fully faded, but they no longer told the whole story. What defined him now was the way he'd run toward the man, ears flying, eyes bright with something once thought lost, joy. One morning, as the sun broke across the field, Chance raced ahead, pausing only to glance back, waiting for his rescuer to catch up. The man smiled, breathless, realizing this was the moment he had prayed for in the clinic, in the storm, in the darkest nights. Not just survival, life. And as chance leapt into the light, the man thought, survival is not measured in breaths taken, but in the courage to love again after the world has broken you. He whispered to the wind, to anyone listening, to everyone who had ever looked away from suffering, every life deserves a second chance. And for those who carried this story with them, he left only one request. Share it, remember it, and never walk past a cry in the dark.